Welcome back, everyone. This is the video to comment on to enter the 5,000 subscriber giveaway. We're 300 and something away. It's been a long time coming, actually. September 2021 was when this giveaway was announced originally. You will notice there's a little plastic tear on this alpha box. It's the reason I've picked it for the giveaway. We got this as part of a collection, actually, for the shop, and it felt like the one to open for the giveaway. So pretty much you're going to comment down below. Ideally, in response to this video, it's going to be a longish video. Then open a case of Mistvale. Your thoughts, feelings, response to the video would be great. And whoever wins will win this box. I'll open it on camera, more than likely live, and I'll ship you all the contents no matter what we receive. So yeah, that's all the giveaway details. This is very exciting for me. It's a long time coming, and I mean, it's exciting also to just get a chance to open another alpha box. But without further ado, got my last case of Mistvale. It's case 12 of 51. So this will... we may get more, but I wanted to... this is sort of the first order that we had for Mistvale, and I wanted to just make a video rather than stream this one. Go a little slower, chat to you guys. I'm not sure what to title this video yet, but I did want to talk about a somewhat negative topic. Or when I say negative, maybe just a topic that people have strong feelings about. And get some feedback, get my ranty thoughts out, and see what other people think other than myself. So, Japan recently had their launch in Tokyo. It was the part of the Mistvale launch. It was the Japanese localized language launch. Something that's been going on for a while, but maybe really became obvious in Japan, was that the high-end Flesh and Blood market seems to be stale. Some would say dead. It's definitely not dead. I think it's just the pricing has stagnated, and more importantly, it's just become very slow to sell a lot of high-end FAB. When I say high-end, I'll also clarify. Gold foils seem to move okay. But sealed high-end, so the first 3 sets, WTR, Alpha, Arc, and Crew first editions. The cold foils from those sets, the Rainbow Foil Majestics from those sets, they seem to have sort of frozen. It's very, very hard to move them, and more importantly, the pricing has gone backwards. Now, I'm talking very subjectively, and how do I put this? What I'm talking about is my personal experience and thoughts. I'm sure someone is going to pipe up and say, no, I sold this recently, I sold that recently. I understand, but this is after speaking to a whole bunch of vendors and collectors after that event. In the lead up to Tokyo, the market had sort of boomed. We had, once the events got announced, a lot of vendors and stores in Japan jumped on and really wanted to stock up on cards that they may have not had access to prior. But before that, and even during that, the market in all the other established places had really died down, including like Black Border, Marvel Heroes, and I noticed that from LA. Now, I don't know why. I have it's a nice pack, cold foil and a Rainbow Foil Majestic. So I'm going to talk about why I think that happens, why it is happening, and also what I think the future looks like for this stuff. Because there's a couple of things that are a given. The game's not dead. FAB seems to be going from strength to strength. LSS, I mean, overall, they're debt-free. They have $1.5 million in prize money. I think that the company's around for the long, long haul. I don't think there's going to be any major changes or signals that maybe things are bad. I think LSS from the jump had that advantage. They had a good game with good OP, organized play, and what that's led to is healthy growth, organic growth, and it's not based on hype anymore, especially the collector or secondary market. It's definitely not based on hype. Maybe hype for new heroes, and we'll talk about that, but that seems to drive the market a lot. But that old school collector, when you want to compare to old Pokemon, old Magic, old Yu-Gi-Oh!, which I'm not familiar with how well or not well those markets are going right now. It's just the FAB version of those, which I am involved in, seems to be very much dead. Slow. So my thoughts, and I'm going to ramble because my thoughts are not completely fleshed out. I wanted to have this video as a discussion. I feel like... I feel a lot of things. So I think... a big part of the issue is if you go all the way back to 2021, which is when I started in this game, the way the market shifted and moved, the influence, for instance, we didn't have Stacksaw back then. We had Kitchen Table TCG was probably the primary place you went to watch any market movements, and if you wanted to gauge the pricing of your cards, that tended to be where you went. I don't even think there's a replacement for that. I don't know where people go now to actually figure out what their cold foil Heart of Findle's worth. Back then, there was like a collector tracker that Louis had. Back then, the hype, the Crypto Bro style, pump and dump, Rudy Patreon type stuff was all very active, very big, and I think... to summarize it, because I don't want to, I'm not trying to trash on any of this. I will also get into defining what a collector / investor / player looks like. But my point I'm trying to make is I think we're still feeling the ramifications of that leaving the game. I'm not an economist. I'm sure someone with... That was a terrible box, by the way. No Marvel. 2 Rainbow Foil Majestics. Let's hope the rest are better. I think we're still feeling the ramifications of that leaving the game. I think the pure scalper investor doesn't play the game simply in it for stocks. Maybe has some sealed alpha in their closet waiting for it to quadruple. I think that's either left, or more importantly, I don't think we've had many, if any, new entries of those. I don't think there's any recruitment of just the pure I'm in FAB for the money people. I think that's the ones that are left actually may not play the game, but they definitely love the art. They might like James White. They might have enough disposable income that they still buy their gold foils, etc., and they don't really care if they make a lot of money or not. It's just something that they want to do. They want to collect. I think the investor type people that, again, just want the money, they've realized that maybe Flesh and Blood isn't the way to go. Another factor might be Lorcana. One Piece, I've seen that locally, big time. I've seen a whole bunch of our local players either switch. So some have just added a new game, which does affect what they will spend on, people don't tend to have unlimited money. So if you went from playing FAB to playing Lorcana and FAB, or playing One Piece and FAB, you're probably spending less money on both games, or definitely on FAB, so you can fund the One Piece purchases, which, by the way, isn't a cheap game to play, from my understanding. But also, I think the collector hype market is much bigger in those games since they're new, just flavor of the month stuff. So if you used to spend X amount of dollars speculatively buying cardboard. It makes sense. I would, if that's what I did for fun. I would probably jump into one of the new games myself, because that's where the new money is. That's where it's more speculative, because there's no real price history for stuff. And I think that's where Fab might be struggling, is some of the price history, like Cold Foil Hearts used to sell for 20,000, and I think we're still feeling the ramifications, and the true price, the market price, what the market wants to spend on a Cold Foil Heart is vastly different from what it was 3 years ago, and that's still settling. I don't think there's enough movement in that market for there to be like a set price. Now, I can tell you what the market price is for a Heart of Final, because I know of a few that have moved recently, but it's still it's a very soft market, and 1 or 2 sales here and there once every couple of months really doesn't mean much. It's hard to gauge. Where am I going with all this? Well, I think Fab is the high-end market is struggling a bit. I also feel like over time a lot of product has been dumped, and there's been more. When I say dumped, there's been more sellers than buyers for a long time for this stuff. Especially in my region, Oceania, there's there's ex-LSS staff to people that played Armories in 2019, went to, I don't know if there were Armories in 2019, but I know there were definitely events or I don't know if it was like testing events or whatever it was, but 2019 to early 2020, anyone that was playing in that time maybe had personal connections to LSS, has a whole bunch of stock. They bought boxes. They, there's anecdotal stories in Australia of people selling Heart of Finals for a couple of $100 or trading them for a couple of Majestics from the set. Like, that happened, and there's a lot of that stock. And those people, some have exited the game, sold their collections, and I think there's just way more sellers of that product now than buyers, and there has been for a while. The other thing is, I think the focus, and this is like a no-brainer, but it seems like the focus for, here we go, Traverse, Rainbow Foil. I think the focus for LSS, which not in a negative way, is definitely the players, and I think the most nurturing and focus goes into the game and the OP, and getting sets out that are draftable, that look good. I mean, Heavy Hitters was a banger of a hit. Mistveil's a banger of a hit. They're very fun to play. The art is... I mean, LSS don't really miss on the art. I feel like if there's a faultless part of that company, it's definitely the art direction and style and execution. So shout out to that team. But aside from the obvious where they have attempted to create secondary market scarcity, like Marvel Emperor, the Dusk Till Dawn serialized cards, etc., I don't think the product really attracts that singular mindset of Flesh and Blood's a good product to buy, to hold on to for money. And I think the biggest part of that is just Fab 2.0. I think once they stopped doing First Ed and Unlimited, you scared that clientele away, which is fine. I'm for it. I like the direction they've gone. But it does seem to have, again, there's like this lingering effect from the old days till now, and I think that's played a part. There's a reason I'm getting into all this too. I have a lot of discussions with vendors, with other card sellers. I buy a lot of collections. Yeah, we basically say no to alpha now. I think we have 30 to 50 play sets of alpha non-foil. By the way, if anyone wants that kind of thing, hit me up. Aside from like Sync Belows and cards like that, E-Strikes perhaps, we can pretty much fill 30 play sets of alpha. Like all the pink, reds, they're very cool play pieces. They're not super expensive, and we would sell them for quite a good price these days because there's just so much of it, and it really doesn't sell anymore. Potentially that's because it's priced too high. It's hard to gauge what people will pay for that. So something you could comment below again, like what would make you replace all your unlimited flick flacks with pink ones, for instance, in red. Where I'm going with this, the discussions around the game, around the collectability, is that it's slow. In saying that, cold foil gauntlet. This might be the way to beat Zen, by the way. I don't know if it is, someone tell me, but it feels like it. Funny we're talking about like the collectability, but then you have Marvel Enigma people offering $3,500 US for the one I pulled, which is crazy for one card if you think about it, and shows that obviously the collectability for the game's not dead. I more talking about old school, older cards, things like Slingshot Underground, artist proofs, things like just cold foil tunics, double majestic. They have very much stagnated, if not gone backwards, in the last 6 months. Buyers, large single stores, their buy lists are very, very low for this stuff. The stuff that used to be a commodity, used to be hard to find, like a cold foil tunic, is now very much, although it's not easy to find, it's very much a buyer's market. Which again, on another tangent, if you are in the market for one, now would be the time to find one. They're very negotiable. I think you have a lot of power negotiating now if you're after anything cold foil from those first 3 sets. I mean, another part, talking about that, crew majestic cold foils used to be, I mean, on par with legendary power index, and that's really changed over time. There's been a couple of bans, but also new cards being printed have hurt that market a lot. So a good example is Courage of Bladehold. Used to be, again, a banger of a card. We're talking 800 US, I think it used to move hands for. And nowadays, I think you'd struggle to get 300 to 400 because it's no longer the card to play. All the warriors want to play Grains. Much better card. Again, I'm not saying it's good or bad that LSS printed Grains. I'm saying the collectability is so driven by the player market that it no longer is enough to own cards that just say crew first ed or own cards that are cold foil. That doesn't seem to be working, including Tunic. I think Tunic, the playability's been diluted itself too because so many good chess pieces have been printed, and there will be printed that over time. I don't think Tunic will ever see a ban, but I do feel like there's a soft ban or a soft power creep happening in the chess piece slot that eventually would drive Tunic, maybe not completely out of the game. I think that would be unlikely, but I think you will start to see less Tunic playing decks overall. Let me explain where I'm going with all this, because it is actually more of a positive spin than not. I'll make some points. First, I don't really care if the collector market is slow or here we go, another legendary. So far, this case has been 0 Marvel case so far, but 2 RF, 1 cold foil legendary is not bad. I think catering to the players is the right move, and I think these products still have enough collectability that the secondary market will always be a fun place to play and potentially make money if you're savvy enough and if you can spot cards that maybe other people haven't yet that might be meta in the future, that kind of thing. I still think buying a cold foil Tunic is a safe bet for an investment in FAB, but I do think that there is some risk to that in and of itself. Because, again, that slot is being diluted slowly, and I think over time, cold foil Tunics, which I predicted a long time ago would outprice a cold foil Heart, and they actually are right now slightly more expensive than a cold foil Heart. I think even that may change over time. So So buyer beware. I don't think you should buy into any card game to invest. I think there's much better ways to invest your money to make money. But if you enjoy the cards and the art, especially if you're a player, buying a Cold Foil Tunic is a great thing to do, because you're gonna get like what you're paying for, a lot of entertainment and joy and comments and conversation starters when you're playing the game. Having a Cold Foil Tunic or a extended art Rainbow Foil Tunic, and then maybe eventually you sell it when you need the money or want to put the funds into something else. My stance on all this is much less negative than this video might appear. I think even after everything I've said, there's one thing that a lot of people who might hold heavy bags, inverted commas, in this game in singles or in sealed stock haven't realized yet. We've had, here we go. Whew. Jade Tiger Marvel. Here's what a lot of people might be missing when it comes to Flesh and Blood. And this is how I view the game and why the fluctuations when I'm talking about the last 6 months, 12 months, even 3 years are kind of irrelevant to me. I think if you look back, if you're someone that's been involved in the secondary market, you will hopefully have a light bulb moment as I explain my thinking. When the US got Flesh and Blood and only received a limited amount of alpha and crew first, etc., like they were sharing with the rest of the world, and LSS was a much smaller company back then, not necessarily printing a whole bunch of the first ed product. There were big booms. The US was the biggest, catapulted the price of alpha, Arcane Rising. I wasn't around for these, but I'm aware of what happened to the pricing before and after the US really got traction with the game. Obviously, Monarch was another big US-driven market boom. Again, I'm not an economist. This is just opinion. And how I see it, I could be wrong. But again, the US, big boom. Then it crashed, which we all know. So a lot of people leave the game that were maybe only in it for the quick money. But we had that same type of activity when Europe got the game. Not just from the Black Border European language product, which I think didn't quite make the game boom, but just Europe in general getting events and having their first Pro Tour announced, etc., and having Pablo win Pro Tour 1. That stuff really affected the market. Like that was where all the high-end cold foils ended up going as a seller. I remember, as someone who does deal a lot in the secondary market, that's what happened. Europe just went bananas. Those events went bananas. A lot of US backpack vendors and shops went over there and sold a whole bunch of stock at their events, and it also birthed a lot of vendors in Europe because there was a lot of money to be made. You definitely buy product in Oceania and then take it to Europe and make quite a hefty profit. And that happened again recently in Japan. It was shorter-lived, but I also think the Japanese TCG market's much more aggressive. I think many millions were spent. Many millions were spent buying FAB cards, and that's dwindled and slowed down. Maybe it has to do with the yen, maybe it has to do with oversaturation, but whatever it was, it slowed down. Oops. Where am I going with this? I think the biggest boom hasn't happened yet. I think even if you go back to the crazy times of the original, the whole Monarch thing, and WTR boxes selling for 8,000 US and Hard to Find was selling for 25,000 to allegedly 50,000 US. The catalyst for those were, there's a nice hit, were like many more new players or collectors jumping in on the game and there not being enough product. And I think the biggest boom hasn't happened because, that's a nice last hit, just a Nick foil. I think the biggest boom is going to happen when LSS do something more down the route of pop culture than purely appealing to spiky TCG players. Whether that be a Netflix show, whether that be a comic book, whether it be a novel, I do believe that that's very much what's going to happen one day. I think the story and the art, the story and the art and the depth in this game. If you listen to the last James White conversation I had, the creativity that goes in. I still don't think the biggest catalyst for this game going from what I still consider to be quite a niche game, a fringe game, to having the type of effect that games like Lorcana and One Piece and Star Wars, like there's a reason those games exist. The intellectual property behind like Star Wars Unlimited is billions of dollars. And that existed before the card game did. I know there's been more than one card game, and I'm just making an example. One Piece is the same. Dragon Ball, Lorcana, they're all massive intellectual properties, and that's why they build a game over them. Is a card game is like a tabletop entertainment. It's a niche. It's not everyone. I think it's also dwindling niche. The average player is probably only getting older. But LSS is doing it in reverse. LSS have built a great game and a community around it, and the content creators and everything in the game right now is actually very early stage stuff, in my opinion, till something big happens. It could be something silly like a Post Malone jumps in on the game, and Rudy was a big catalyst for the game growing in the US. I think there's every chance one day someone, like I noticed, Penguins, Charlie, if you guys watch this guy on YouTube, he just does random YouTube commentary, but he's been making a lot of Magic content lately. And that's one way for pop culture to enter, or the game to become more cool, inverted commas, with people that may not necessarily already like FAB, is getting... I think that's what happened in Japan. We had some bigger names, bigger YouTubers than pretty much anyone that exists in the FAB sphere right now jump into the game, and I think that helped the growth. But I think one day, if a YouTube series, a Netflix series, a animated show, heck, a live action show, if a comic book comes out, if a novel comes out, and that could be years in the future. And tangent again, I think it doesn't matter how many years in the future. I don't think LSS are going anywhere. If they're growing and they're debt free, there's really very little risk for that company to struggle or go out of business. It's going to take a lot of bad moves for that to happen. When that happens, I think the pricing, every price you see today will be irrelevant, because there will be a whole bunch of people wanting Sacred Arts purely for the art, way more than exist in the game. There'll be way more people wanting just art pieces because it's their favorite from the show or the book or the short series that they read or watched. And that will bring negatives, because the game is still played and people will want those cards. But if you're worried at all about the health of the market in FAB, you're still, I think, looking at things shorter term than I am. Because the ebbs and flows, even in the 3 years I've been playing, have been very noticeable. We're in a down now. It feels like this set's doing amazing. The Marvels are selling. The heroes, even from heavy hitters, are still selling. But try selling a cold foil. Storm Striders is not what it used to be. Selling sealed product, which we don't do, but the movement on alpha boxes is very, very low, as an example. Like, people don't really want to spend the money they used to on them. But I don't think that matters. In the long history of the game, this is a blip, and I think you'll see in time, if and when there's more pop culture entries into the game, or more non-player stuff happens to the game, casual formats happen, that kind of thing, you're going to see a big change. And why am I telling you that? If you're holding on to stuff, keep it. I wouldn't be selling when things are bad or low, or it feels like they're low. And if not, this is the time to buy some of this stuff. Not just saying that because I own a shop. I'm not plugging my shop, although we do have a lot of stock of this stuff. Buy it locally, buy it from who you know. It doesn't matter. I just think this is definitely the time to be grabbing that alpha box if you haven't. They've never been this low. They may still go lower, but I really don't think it matters for the long term. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and please do comment your opinion and thoughts below to win the alpha box. We'll draw, we haven't hit 5,000 yet. We'll draw like a week after we hit 5,000 just to give people a chance. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here for 3 years. If you have been, you can support the channel by becoming a member. If you're still here, it's $3 Australian, $2 USD a month. And you do get special discounts and stuff on the single shop, flickenbox.com. But again, thanks, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.